Welcome to From the Source, a podcast where we connect directly with the marketers, buyers, and operators who are building and scaling modern B2B growth engines. In an industry filled with noise, buzzwords, and endless tactics, the show focuses on what actually works. Each conversation dives into how experienced marketing leaders think about demand generation, vendor partnerships, team alignment, emerging technologies like AI, and the real challenges of building effective marketing organizations. Today, we're joined by Scott Woodruff, Director of Global Marketing Campaigns and ABX at Cornerstone OnDemand. Welcome, Scott. How are you doing today?
Good. Happy to be here, Dave.
Great. Yes. Thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to today's conversation, as I'm sure a lot of marketers are. ABM ABX is a very fun thing to discuss. There's a lot of different theories, a lot of different practices out there. So we're looking forward to getting your expertise. You've spent the last few years focused on ABM or ABX, as Cornerstone calls it. I know we'll get into the distinction there, but what originally pulled you in to the account-based world?
Yeah, it was just an evolution of marketing. I went from general marketing, from like you thinking about SEO and paid advertising, to the more specific. When you start getting into more sophisticated accounts and tactics, you start realizing you have to focus on specific accounts. It can't be general. It's not as effective, right? So it was a natural evolution from general marketing into trying to be more effective. So identifying those key accounts that you are more likely to succeed with. So it's grown over the years, right? When I started account-based marketing, it's not the same as it is today. And so it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, that's great. I've always likened it to marketing, fishing with a net versus ABM ABX is more like serving a very specific dinner for very specific people.
Yeah, and I've actually talked about the same thing, where it's like, net fishing to spear fishing. We're going to identify the fish we want, right? And go after that one.
Exactly. So for marketers who still think traditionally in demand generation terms, how do you explain the shift from ABM to ABX?
Yeah, when I talk to people about that, I still think there's a very important need for general demand-based marketing. That's not ABM and ABX. I wouldn't say replaces it. I think it's an addition. It's another tool you can use, right? So you need the broad base because you need to be able to get your brand out there. You need to hit a broad base. But now when you're saying, okay, we have pipeline numbers we need to hit, and we have a certain set of strategic accounts that our company really wants, you have to focus on that. The broad base stuff isn't going to be specific enough. And now with how marketing has evolved over the years, that's kind of the expectations companies have, that when they're being reached out to, it's going to be custom to them. I don't know about you, but I get, broad-based outreach all the time, and I probably ignore it most of the time, right? The ones that I do pay attention to tend to be more specific to me, that they've done the research, they know what I care about, and they're talking to that specifically, right? Or their ads are speaking directly to things that I care about. Those are the ones I might click on, versus a generic one I just look over the whole time. I won't click on them. And so really, it's not that the one is more important than the other. It's an evolution. You need it. It's kind of like the funnel. You need that top layer, and as it goes down into more specific. So I'd say the evolution comes, and the change comes from when you need to focus on strategic accounts that you need to win, or you need to retain, or whatever it is, and you have to put more emphasis on how do we engage them correctly.
Right. No, and I couldn't agree more. And like you, I'm inundated with just blanket emails, some of them trying to sell me leads, and we're a lead generation company, which I always find funny. How do you, just to dive deeper on that, because I think it's an important distinction in terms of personalization. It's a big topic around ABX. How do you skirt the lines between personalization from a personal standpoint, from a business pain point standpoint? How do you go about identifying those and kind of blending the two?
Yeah, so there's kind of two sides of it, and I think they need to both be in there. You need to have personalization in there at the person level, but you also need company. So you have to use multiple sources. Like, I partner very heavily with our sales team, right? Because they have a lot of insights into accounts. They might have already had conversations with them, or have friends that work at the company they're able to get information on, right? And so you can get account level data from that. Also, we have tools like we use Sixth Sense that gives us insights into, intent data and stuff like that. But then you have to know your customers, right? You have to understand what their pain points as a person is, right? So we're in the HR space, so we're targeting a lot of CHROs, and directors of HR and stuff like that. And so understanding what they care about, and it's not necessarily like, hey, this tool will do this and that. It's more of like, how does it make their life easier? How does it get them the promotion? How does it get them paid more, or whatever it is, right? So that they care about the outcome. Yes, they need it to work for the company, but they need it to work for them as well, right? And so you have to understand your customers, but you can also rely on people like the sales team to be honest, I couldn't do my job without the insights from the sales team. They're the one who give me the base layer of like, hey, what's important at this account or this segment, right? What do they care about? What's going on in the industry?
Yeah, we'll definitely dive in deeper there because I think that's an important piece is how do you collaborate internally amongst the teams, not just sales, but also other stakeholders.
Yep.
But before we do, I'm finding myself more and more having the conversation of even though you're targeting HR, doesn't mean all HR levels think the same way or have the same pain points or even speak the same language, candidly. The CHROs, the top level, have a very, very different set of focuses than those that are managing HRs and probably more in the weeds with their personnel. So having that content and messaging that's able to really engage both of them on their level because they are both integral in that marketing sales relationship, right?
Yeah, that is exactly correct. And we run campaigns like that all the time where, we're targeting practitioners, as in they're using our software, our platform to actually implement on the daily basis. Their pain points are much different than the executive level. They're thinking long term, where the practitioner cares about today, cares about, getting compliance in line, right? Where the executives are caring about how do I upskill my workforce over the next few years.
Right.
The practitioner doesn't care about that as much. They want today to be taken care of.
It's a great example. Yeah, I think we'll continue to see that evolution as buyer groups change, they expand. There's more and more people involved in making decisions around company-wide purchases because budgets are constrained, and there's so many options out there for teams today. So I think we're going to continue to see that evolution. So great to hear your focus there. Digging into kind of the collaboration between teams, you've mentioned how you take input from sales and take their information so you can use that in your personalization. But based on our previous conversations, I think it's probably a two-way street, right? So I guess help me understand how you go about working with sales and BDR teams and other stakeholders within your organization to make sure that everybody is on the same page, moving in the same direction as it relates to your ABX strategies.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that I don't come in from the ABX side, come in and say, hey, this is what we're doing, and dictate to the sales team or any other teams, this is who we're targeting. I want it to be collaborative. So I come in and I meet with, if it's a team or it's an individual, based on if it's a one-to-many or one-to-few versus a one-to-one, right? And say, okay, what should we do? This is what we're wanting. This is what our goals are. What do you suggest? And really often when it comes to like the accounts that we're targeting, I will give them insights. Like I said, we have Sixth Sense. We can give them intent data, engagement scores and stuff like that. But I want them to choose which accounts are important to them, because this gets them on board, right? I've done it in the past. I've made this mistake where I come in and said, hey, here's the list of key accounts that we're going to target. This is what we're doing. And the sales has said, oh, okay, great. But I have these other accounts that I'm focusing on because they know specifics of those accounts, not just broadly like, hey, here's some accounts we think are important. So I'm a firm believer that even when I kick a campaign off, they are involved. I don't make the decisions without their input. And it has often happened where I'm like, hey, I feel like this area is important. They're like, yes, but because of this and that's happening in this industry, these accounts are the ones that we're focusing on. And I'm totally good with that, right? And sometimes it doesn't align with the intent data because, like I said, they have insights that tools don't pick up,
Right. Oh, we could spend an entire 3 podcasts on intent data because it's nebulous at best. But yeah, no, I think you did touch on something incredibly important there, though. You mentioned, the campaign motions, one-to-one, one-to-few, one-to-many. Can you break down how each one of those works, both in your planning, but also kind of your strategy and communication collaboration within the teams?
Sure. Yeah. So we'll start with the one-to-ones because it's the most obviously it's like
Right.
targeting one account, right? So we work individually with the sales rep, but like our field marketers are very heavily involved. I don't run any campaigns without field marketers. Our BDRs are very involved, and depending on if it's a customer or a prospect, if it's a customer, our customer success team is involved, and our MOPS team, marketing operations, is involved. Usually on the outskirts, but helping orchestrate the back end of all of our tools and everything. So we try to bring everyone together on these campaigns. But so for a one-to-one, we meet with them at kickoff, right? As saying, okay, what's happening to this account? What's important to them? What are their pain points? What does this campaign need to look like? What does it feel like in terms of messaging, collateral, that kind of stuff, right? We bring to the table, best practices. This is what we see working with a lot of these accounts. My field marketers, they are key in this. They're the ones who are saying, hey, because a lot of what I do is on the digital side, but those field marketers are the ones that start turning it into in-person engagements. You're right, getting them to events and stuff like that, or even on digital events. We're actually talking to them, and so we meet with them in the kickoff, plan out this campaign, and it's an ongoing thing because we can plan 2-3 months ahead, but things change, right? And so we meet with them regularly, either depending on the account and the needs. It's either every other week or monthly. We meet with that same team. We all come together and saying, okay, what's happened? What are results have we seen? What do we need to change, update? What do we need to plan for the next few months? Because we have new events coming up, something changes at the account. Maybe someone was moved on to a new role and they're going to have a new leadership there that we need to try and engage or whatever it is. So on those one-to-ones, we meet with them very regularly, updating that campaign. And these are long-term campaigns. We don't run it for like 2 or 3 months and be like, oh, we're good. One-to-ones are typically minimum 6 months, if not more, like a year or longer, right?
Right.
So these are long-term engagements. Now you move on to one-to-fuse. That's typically you're looking at, maybe 10 to 30 accounts in a one-to-few. And typically it is a segment in the sense of an industry, like maybe it's a healthcare industry or manufacturing or something. And there's
alignment amongst those 20
exactly
to 30 companies. Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be that. We have done it based on accounts from a specific sales team that has a group of accounts that are very focused, or they know they need a specific solution. So it could be in different industries, but yet we know they're all have the need for this one solution. But most often, I would say it's industry based, right? And so we bring together. So with 10 to 30 accounts, you're looking at, depending on, it can be anywhere from like 3 to maybe 7 or 8 different sales reps. We'll bring them all together as well at kickoff, right? Be like, all right, this is the plan. These are accounts that you've selected. What messaging resonates with these accounts? And we'll try to come up with something. Obviously, these can't be as tailored as those one-to-ones, but we can still tailor them to the industry. And there's lots of tools out there. For our landing pages, we use Path Factory, which allows us to customize it dynamically. So when an account lands on the landing page, it still feels tailored to them because we can put their logo in there, change out words that make sense for them, their company name and so forth. But it still is a little bit more generic, right? And so then we'll typically meet again with those on a monthly basis or maybe every other month. We don't meet with them quite as often to review the campaign, what's going on, This is where also we start from the field marketing side, get into some tailored events, because for one-to-ones, we can do like on-site events for them, but we're not hosting a webinar specifically for that one account, right? We'll try to get them to—
For that industry, yeah.
Exactly. Once you start getting in and you having a group of accounts, be like, okay, maybe if it's the airline industry, we're going to have a webinar around just the airline industry, right? We can start getting into stuff like that, right? And so we have some additional tactics that go on with one-to-fuse. And we meet with them, like I said, about monthly, maybe every other month, to review the campaign, what's going on, anything changed in the industry. Like last year, we work in the public sector, so government. There were a lot of changes going on last year, and there was updates to those campaigns happening all the time. And then once you get into one-to-manys, this starts becoming, I don't want to say hands off, because it's not by any means, but less of we meet with the dedicated team every month. We will meet with a team or teams together, because these one-to-manys really are a lot of accounts. We're talking hundreds of accounts, but we try to do work in an automated process. So 6sense has their audience workflows that lets us put in a big, group of accounts, and based on their intent levels, intent scores, or their stages in the funnels, we can put them into different, sequences, whether it's, more of an engagement down to lead gen and outreach and so forth, right? And so we'll meet with the team, and they give us insights into like messaging and what's happening in the industry generally. There's usually less customization going on here, but it's more making them aware of what's happening, and they still help select the accounts. Like they might say, hey, here's our sales reps have like A accounts, B accounts, and C accounts. And so we might target A and Bs in this or something like that, right? So we'll have a few hundred in there. And then it's more of an automated process. They do flow through this campaign based on their engagement scores and intent data and stuff like that. So early stage down to late stage. And then we have automated outreach. We use outreach, the platform outreach, which ties into 6sense, so they can automatically be put in outreach sequences. Right. And we'll also do more gifting here, right? Because that can be automated too. Depending on their engagement, we'll send out, gifting stuff to try and generate some of those initial meetings and whatnot. But like I said, it's probably a little bit more hands-off and less customized. We still try to dynamically, customize the page so it feels custom to them, but the messaging is going to be broader, right? But these campaigns can lead and flow into the one-to-ones or one-to-fews, because once we start engaging those and we're like, hey, this is an important account, they can get their own one-to-one or be put into a one-to-few, right? So it's really a feeder campaign for the others.
Yeah, it's top of the funnel, right?
Exactly.
It's working everything down. So which kind of, to break it down for everyone listening, though, what other factors go into that decision on where a company or a target is placed between one-to-one and one-to-few? Because that's the biggest distinction, right?
The one-to-ones are really reserved for our largest accounts, the enterprise level, the ones that have the biggest opportunities, right? Or it doesn't have to be an opportunity. It could be a current customer that has a very large contract with us that's in danger of not renewing, right? And we've had quite a few like that where we've had a lot of success helping to re-engage those accounts and turn that relationship around, right? But the one-to-ones are typically our largest enterprise level accounts. And the sales team, as I had mentioned before, has to be very heavily involved. We won't run campaigns for this prospect or customer side for accounts that sales reps don't have a plan for, right? If they're like, oh, this seems like a good one, right? Be like, great, what's your plan for it? They have to be highly engaged and already have, plans of, I want to reach out to these people at the company. I want to try to get to them to this event or whatever. We just want them highly engaged, because I've tried it before where, we run the campaign where they're not engaged and nothing really progresses. The sales team's very key in this,
Yeah.
Those one-to-ones are those enterprise. Enterprise can still be in one-to-fews, but also we'll start adding into one-to-fews some of those accounts that aren't quite as big. They're still large accounts, don't get me wrong, but they're not SMB, but they can be, maybe mid-market kind of accounts can be in those one-to-fews. The one-to-manys have, again, there's still some enterprise, a lot of mid-market, and some of the larger SMB. To be honest, we don't do a lot with SMB.
For your specific solution. So it sounds like There are many data points, right? It's obviously feedback from sales is integral, but also propensity or possibility of partnership is a data set. And then it sounds like you're overlaying intent from several partners. And then that's really what tracks it through those different movements within the campaign. And then to make it even more complex, you're probably running more than one-to-few and more than one-to-many at a time, right?
Yes, we are. We have multiple, and we work globally too. So we have the Americas, we have Europe, and we have Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Asia kind of area. And so, they all have their own campaigns. So there's a lot to orchestrate, but when you get it running well, you can have a machine that's really producing a lot of engagement with key accounts.
That's the setup, right? Mm-hmm. The strategy behind it. So one challenge we see is after the marketing programs have run, after there's been engagement to be identified, what's that handoff look like on the back end? How does that transition happen?
Yeah, and that is key, because the way I see ABX is it's proactive. A lot of lead gen is reactive. Someone comes in and fills out a form, now we react to it and try and get meetings and move the account forward. ABX is proactive. We're trying to engage these accounts. They haven't reached out to us yet, but we're saying, hey, this level of engagement, we believe they're ready. And we actually, in our data, we can see once we get to a certain stage, we're 10 times more likely to open an opportunity with an account than accounts that haven't reached that stage yet. But that does not mean they fill out a form saying they want to meet with us. So we're proactive, right? So that's what we're getting to is, okay, how does that transition from the engagement to actual outreach happening? And this is probably one of the most important areas that I find with ABX, and is, for me, one of the harder areas to have run consistently and effectively. So we work with our BDRs. That's really where the transition happens, is to our BDRs and outreach, right? And so I meet with the BDR team very regularly, at least every other month. I'm on their team call, reviewing campaigns, reviewing reports of accounts that have engaged to that level, and just keeping them engaged and excited about what's going on, right? So we have multiple tools that we use. Sixth Sense has things that we send. We send each BDR a weekly email with their most engaged accounts, right, that have engaged this last week. We've also created custom reports inside our Salesforce that automatically filter for the BDR. They can go in, and they go in every day and see their list of accounts that have reached that engagement status where we want them to outreach. We then work with them on their outreach sequences. They are the experts in that, so I'm not dictating to them exactly what needs to be said and how it needs to be said. But we, like I'd mentioned before, the gifting is a big thing for us, right? And so we work with them on the gifting campaigns, what's effective and what's not, right? Because we actually set up those gifting campaigns for them and whatnot. And so then we also work with them on the events. We have upcoming events of how are we reaching out, how are we getting people them, what are we doing to invite them, are they personalized or not? So that handoff is very important. And I would say, besides maybe my field marketers, I work with them the most. The BDRs are probably my next most important team that I work with. And to be honest, the way I see success with what I do is making the BDRs more successful. I want the sales team to be successful. I want them to close accounts and get the revenue. But I found if I can make the BDRs successful, everything else tends to work smoothly. So that's the area that I probably focus on most.
That's smart. I think, obviously BDRs are the frontline revenue impact in that sales workflow. And there is already a pretty well mandated, I'm sure, workflow between BDR and sales from that.
Yes.
So I think that's a really key, important layer to layer on here, right? Not all organizations are set up the same, but you're really focused on revenue impact, right? Yep. And that's what is making the BDRs successful.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And ultimately, if I can keep that relationship good, I'm making them more successful. It makes them happy. And that's what I tell them. Like, hey, I succeed when you succeed. So they understand that we're a partner, and that's what I want to keep it,
Yeah. There's a lot of key players in this, right? Obviously, you have the strategy and the functions between yourselves and your field marketing teams, even global teams, as you kind of started to talk about how they differ between global touch points. But then also your vendors are probably pretty important in there. I know you've mentioned Sixth Sense a few times. Intent data it sounds like a very big indicator for you, and utilizing Sixth Sense's intent data. Use other vendors in that kind of top of the funnel area to maybe make those one to few or one to many marketing campaigns work even smoother.
So there's a few. Like I mentioned, we use Path Factory for our landing pages, right? Mm-hmm. It lets us build customized landing pages as well as those dynamic ones where we can build one page and still feels dynamic for a larger group, feel customized for a larger group. So for our landing pages, we use Path Factory. We also use Zoom Info. We do pull a lot of contact data from Zoom Info. So we'll have accounts, that engage and we don't have any contacts for. And so the BDRs can go in and pull contact data for those. We will also preemptively do that when we have our one-to-manys, when we have a large set of accounts, we'll preemptively go in and pull contacts for all of these accounts so that when they engage and to that level, the BDRs already have that available, right? And then I mentioned for gifting, we use Reach Desk. So Reach Desk has been good for us, right? And we use that for all of our gifting and whatnot. So those are probably the main areas. We do use other platforms as well for advertising. Like we use Sixth Sense for advertising, but we also advertise on LinkedIn as well. But those are probably the main platforms that we use.
Okay. Yeah, obviously HR being a very niche focus.
Yep, agreed.
Cool. So all of these moving pieces, all moving simultaneously, all at once. I guess let's look forward a few years. What have you identified? What do you think would be the coolest feature or the coolest tool to add on to your existing stack? And that would address the biggest, I guess, opportunity in your ABX strategies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a lot of things coming up. AI is going to make a big impact on a lot of this stuff. And to be honest, I don't have a good answer to this one yet. This is one area that I continue to think about and be like, all right, how is this going to change marketing? What is going to happen? My guess, if I had to guess, AI, the platforms are going to start advertising in the next few years, right? They'll have advertising on there. Be like, okay, how do I engage? And with AI becoming more prominent in everyone's workflow, how do I engage people on AI? And so I don't know if I have a great answer for that one specifically, but that's an area that I think about quite often. And from the perspective of engaging them from AI, but then also how do I utilize it? Because how do I automate more of this? Because our one-to-ones and one-to-fews, there's a lot of work that goes on our side. One-to-manys, we're starting to automate more, with those campaigns I talked about, which has been really great. But when the sales team sees what we can do for one-to-ones, there's a lot of demand for it. How do I make this easier to scale, right? And scaling one-to-ones is not easy right now. We are trying to use it, especially when it comes to account research and messaging, and it helps a lot with that. But how do I really scale that? So that is an AI is the area that I'm looking into. But I'm going to be honest with you, I probably don't have a great answer of, oh, this is what I need in the future. I think AI is still evolving. We don't know where it's going to end up yet.
Well, it changes too quickly to really have a good answer for that one. So sorry to trap you. Well, but so we looked forward. Now let's look back. 5 years ago, what do you think we're saying now? Like, well, we really screwed that up. We should not have been doing that.
Yeah. And this, I'd kind of briefly mentioned this a little bit. When I first started account-based marketing, it's a lot different than what it is now, right? I think I was definitely too broad. When I started, we would take a list of like 1,000 accounts and be like, all right, we're doing account-based marketing, targeting these 1,000 with our generic, message again, And so I think there's been a lot of shift in personalization. And I think that's what I got wrong in the beginning. It wasn't really personalized. Yes, we had a list of accounts we targeted, but it wasn't truly personalized. And it was really just a marketing motion. It was me saying, hey, I'm going to target these accounts. Hopefully we can generate some interest, and hopefully they turn into an opportunity in revenue, right? Now, and this is where the difference between account-based marketing, which ABM versus ABX, account-based experience, is because now everyone's involved. It's not a marketing motion, right? It's marketing and field and sales and marketing operations, right? And client or customer success, So it's really about the experience. And I think that's really what has changed from it being just a marketing motion to a whole go-to-market team effort,
That's very insightful. I think, is there anything that I didn't ask? Because I'm not the ABX expert. Is there anything that I didn't ask that your fellow colleagues would gain a lot of value from?
I think you've done pretty good. I think some of the areas that are most important we've kind of hit. But the thing that I guess I would say too is that we didn't mention before is the tactics are always changing, and I don't always have the answers. Some of the best ideas we've had have come from other members like sales team or marketing operations, or whatever it is, right? So I would say the thing that's most important is don't come into a campaign or anything like that assuming that you have the best answer to everything. The things that have been most successful often come from those who aren't running the campaigns. I'm here, and that's what I tell everyone that I meet with on our side. It's like, specifically I'm talking to the sales team, I want you to feel like this is your campaign. If you had an idea, be like, I want to do something crazy. I want to do something completely different for this one. Great. You let me know, and I will help facilitate that for you, right? So that's one thing that I would say is use what you have in the terms of the team that you have. Everyone's got great ideas and wants to try something new. You can't obviously do everything, but it might spark another idea. So I don't come in and dictate this is how the campaign has to run. I come in with best practices, but say, hey, what do you want to do, right? Because they have insights that I don't when it comes to accounts.
No, that's key. We always talk about here, those that know everything never learn anything.
Yeah,
right.
Agreed.
So I think keeping that open mind is absolutely important. Well, Scott, That's all I have. So, I want to thank you for joining us and sharing your perspective. It's been truly enlightening. I really appreciate it. Not only your time, but also your experience in sharing that with our listeners. And thank you to everyone listening from the source. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow the podcast and stay tuned for more conversations with marketers and technologists who are shaping the future of B2B growth.